The Senate will come to order. Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would those guests in the chamber, colleagues, and guests in the gallery please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Balmer, Baumgardner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert,
Excused.
John, Johnston, Johnston,
Absent.
Jones, Kafalis, Kerr, Kerr, okay. Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez-Humenick, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott, Sonnenberg, Stedman, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods, Mr. President.
Here. Please add Senator Holbert to the roll.
Not here. Morgan?
With 34 present, 1 absent, 0 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Donovan.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal from Tuesday, February 10th be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is adopted. The journal is approved. Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will proceed out of order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we have a number of treats going on in the building today. I know that we've got CSU in the building, and we're going to be looking forward to celebrating some things with them. Then we also have another choir here in our chamber. They are seated in the gallery. The Colorado Christian University Children's Choir is going to grace us with their singing this morning. If you're finding yourself strangely familiar with this group, if you're finding yourself saying, this group is familiar to me and I just can't write, particularly one individual, you'll maybe recollect that I think it's been now 3 years ago, how time flies in this place, but CCU Women's Choir came and there was somebody deeply embedded in the soprano section, my daughter. I technically can't introduce because she's not on the floor, but if she would, I would introduce her. I'm happy to report that having started as just a soprano in the choir, she's now been elevated by her colleagues. She serves as the assistant director of the CCU Women's Choir, so a father is extremely proud of that.
Children's choir.
Did I say CCU Women's Choir? Sorry. She never grows up. And I'm going to defer to my colleague from Lakewood here in a second, who's going to give some details of what they're celebrating this year. This is an exciting year for CCU, but it's a real privilege to have them. We'll chat about them more in a second. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Please add Senator Johnston to the roll. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to kind of lay this out a little bit, so we're actually going to have them do a song or maybe two before we chat about them a little bit more. So with that, Mr. President, maybe you'll give them the sign.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. A little bit of information about Colorado Christian University and their women's choir. So back in 1914, with one teacher and 2 students, the Denver Bible Institute was begun. And since that time, they have graduated over 18,000 students. In the 1950s, they combined with Rockmont College in Lakewood and have since called Lakewood their home. CCU offers more than 50 degree programs through their College of Undergraduate Studies and College of Adult and Graduate Studies programs. CCU ranks, and I believe we've all heard about their national rankings in faith-based education circles, but in general circles, educational circles as well, CCU ranks in the top 2% of nationwide colleges by ACTA for the 3rd year in a row. That's the American Council of Trustees and Alumni. And the CCU Elementary Ed program is nationally ranked by the National Council on Teacher Quality. As this past year, they've been celebrating their 100th year anniversary since forming as the Denver Bible Institute. It's been fun as I travel up and down Garrison and Alameda and Lakewood to see the signs they've put up and the celebrations they've had around their 100-year anniversary. But not just looking backwards. I don't think their best days are in the past. I think they're yet to come, because if you drive down Alameda today, you will see quite a bit of construction. And we're very pleased in Lakewood to notice that there's over $100 million worth of investment by CCU in construction and investing in the community. This is a wonderful community asset in Jefferson County. We are very pleased to have them, and I'm very hopeful that we'll get to hear at least one more song. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could have a moment of personal privilege as well.
Granted.
I appreciate that. I would be remiss if I didn't kind of put myself right in here right before that final number, which I'm looking forward to greatly, because this is the institution that I graduated from, oh boy, some 40 plus years ago now. So I know I know a big chunk of that history of the past 100 years. Actually served as a trustee for the institution for 18 years as well, and my daughter is graduating this spring from Colorado Christian University, and she's actually there today. The governor will be on campus today, and she's working on some of that project. But it really has been. I appreciate the senator from Lakewood's comments on the positive contribution Colorado Christian University is to Lakewood, but indeed to the entire state and in many ways to the world. And would love to spend about 5 more hours talking on that, but I won't. I'll simply say welcome, glad to have you here, and we look forward to the next 100 years.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a moment of personal privilege to also echo the thoughts of our colleague from Lakewood and also our colleague from Berthoud. Colorado Christian University is definitely a gem that we have in Jefferson County, but its reach goes out through the whole state. Bringing forth the leaders of tomorrow, very, very strong people that can stand on their own. I've had an opportunity to work with them, and I'm proud to say that my oldest son is also a graduate of Colorado Christian University, so we're extremely happy to have them here today.
Thank you. We are going to ask that they grace us with an encore. I will let you know that Senator Shuffle didn't share with us that the assistant choir director used to work with us. His daughter was an aide here, and when I asked her if she could bring them for opening day, she said she wasn't sure I could get the votes. Thank you for coming today. It all worked out. Please. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, CCU Choir. I did want to just mention that the CCU Women's Choir is directed by Dr. Jill Schroeder-Dorn. She's been leading this band of merry women and doing an excellent job. And I did want to encourage all of us, while we welcome them here to the floor of the Senate and the Capitol today, today is actually the start of their statewide tour. That's why they haven't been here every year. They only do this every so many years, where they gather together and in their big red bus, they crisscross the state, singing and representing their school well. So thank you so much for coming, and good luck on your tour. Godspeed, and yeah, I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Committee reports.
February 10, 2015, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 139 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation. February 10, 2015, Committee on State Vendors and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1052 be referred to the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 106 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 12 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 80 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 142 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 45 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 97 be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance, or Committee on Appropriations. February 10, 2015, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 130 be postponed indefinitely. February 10, 2015, Committee on Local Government, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 135 be referred to the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation. February 10, 2015, Committee on Local Government, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1017 be referred to the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. February 10, 2015, Committee on Transportation, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 90 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Finance with favorable recommendation.
Senate Services.
February 11, 2015, correctly printed Senate Bill 177 and correctly engrossed Senate Bills 55 and 74.
Third reading of bills. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 74?
Senate Bill 74 by Senator Neville and Representative Joshi concerning requirement that healthcare providers disclose the charges they impose for common healthcare services when payment is made directly rather than by a third party.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 74 and ask for a favorable vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 74? Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 74 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator John. Mr. Majority Leader. Senator Woods. Senator Crowder. Senator Lambert. Senator Kafalis. Senator Aguilar. Senator Jones. Please add the President. Senator Scott. Senator Grantham. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 55?
Senate Bill 55 by Senator Hodge and Representatives Arndt and Becker concerning state engineer administration of tailwater ditches.
Senator Hodge.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 55 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 55? Are there any no votes? Senator Baumgardner. Senator Scott. Senator Balmer. Senator Roberts. Senator Grantham. Senator Crowder. Senator Garcia. With 28 ayes, 7 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 55 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Sonnenberg. General Order, second reading of bill. Senator Grantham. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the General Order's second reading of the bill's calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Order's second reading of bills. Senator Grantham will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 122?
Senate Bill 122 by Senator Newell and Representative Moreno concerning the continuation of the regulation of massage parlors in connection therewith repealing the regulation of massage parlors.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Senate Bill 122 lay over to February 12th.
You've heard the motion that Senate Bill 122 be laid over until February 12th. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 77?
Senate Bill 77 by Senator Neville and Representative Neville concerning the creation of a Parents' Bill of Rights.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 77 and the committee report.
To the committee report.
We had one small amendment, which basically, in the bill, we had 48 hours for the schools to provide information to concerned parents, and of course, we changed that to 2 business days to make better sense and also to deal with school schedules, et cetera.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill creates a Parents' Bill of Rights that sets forth some specific rights of parents in regard to education, physical and mental health care of their children, and specifically, the bill is focused on protecting the physical and mental health care of children, the educational choices of the children by the parents, and the bill prohibits the state or any other entity in Colorado from infringing upon the fundamental rights of the parent to direct that upbringing, education, and physical and mental health care of their child without first demonstrating that there is a compelling governmental interest in no less restrictive manner of doing so. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 77? Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to bring up a little the discussion we had in the Education Committee around this bill. And appreciate the title, certainly, Parents' Bill of Rights. I think that highlights just how important this conversation needs to be and how carefully we need to tread here. As we're all very aware, as any student who's gone through my 9th grade U.S. government class knows, the Bill of Rights, when we talk of the Bill of Rights, we're talking about a part of our U.S. Constitution that is some people might call it sacred. I think we would all call it very important. They're all the enumerated rights in the Bill of Rights, in the first 10 amendments to our U.S. Constitution, are absolutely important to our everyday lives and certainly as we go through as a civilized society here in the United States. And so when we are naming a bill, the Bill of Rights, a parent's Bill of Rights, I think we need to make sure that we are keeping that sort of very serious, very important consideration in mind. That's why I want to talk about a few of the groups and people who came in to testify against this bill in the Education Committee. So we had groups, we had Marie Moses from the Colorado Bar Association come in and talk about some of the concerns that the law community has around this, and specifically pointing out a lot of the rights that this bill talks about are already rights. They're already things that are protected under law here in Colorado. A few of the other groups, CCASA, the Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Bree Adkins, the executive director, talked about some statistics that we've heard on several different bills in the Education Committee, that 1 in 4 girls here in Colorado, 1 in 6 boys in Colorado will have some sort of sexual assault against them before they turn 18. And one of the most alarming pieces of that statistic is that over 90% of the perpetrators of those child sexual assaults are known to the victim. We certainly had folks from our education community come in. We had the court-appointed special advocates in Colorado, Peg Rudden, come in and talk to us. That's COCASA, as opposed to CCASA I mentioned earlier. And again, the discussion around what is in place right now to protect children, especially children who are victimized, whether it's through sexual assault, whether it's through domestic violence, what we have in place right now to protect these children. And in my opinion, what we've heard in the media lately, the past year or so, is that if anything, we need to be tightening up our protection of these kids who are most at risk from various forms of abuse. And I think that Senate Bill 77 actually works against that direction, goes in the other direction. I did want to highlight some testimony that we had. At one point, it was brought up that there are a lot of government agencies and government employees that were testifying against the bill or had testified against the bill and were no longer in the room at the end. I want to bring up Jennifer Stith. Jennifer Stith is the executive director of the Wings Foundation, the Wings Foundation for Adult Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse. I first met Jennifer last year when I went and toured the Wings Foundation offices. Pretty modest offices, a couple of rooms where they have some group therapy support activities. They also have rooms where they can provide one-on-one support for people. This is a private foundation. They have, I believe it's 2 full-time employees and a part-time employee. And Jennifer herself is a adult survivor of child sexual abuse, and that was obviously part of what she brings to the table and her passion for this. She's not a government employee. She doesn't work for the government. She's not part of any government agency, but she testified against this bill because, in her opinion, it increases the risk that students and kids in Colorado could be victimized by sexual abuse or domestic violence. And also, under this bill, it actually lowers the likelihood that perpetrators will be identified and prosecuted. So with that, I'd ask for your opposition to Senate Bill 77.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I want to share an article that was in the Denver Post, but before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about just prior experience, and I know most of you have heard me say this before, but I served in the classroom for over 25 years, and during that period of time, one of the greatest opportunities I had, and as well as working with children, was working with their parents and working on when there was an issue, when there was something that they had objections to or were concerned about, to collaborate and to work together. I went to the Economic Development Caucus this morning, and one of the first things they talked about is what works best for Colorado, and it's collaboration. Collaboration is what brings businesses to Colorado. Collaboration is the way we solve things. And so after some of the testimony for Senate Bill 77, I talked with a couple of the parents who had testified in favor of the bill. And I said, well, were you able to work within your school district? Were you able to work with your child's teacher? And how did that work? And I was really pleased to hear them say that for them it had worked. In some cases, maybe it doesn't. And I think that in some cases there are some situations where people struggle with that a little bit more. But I would say for the most part, allowing people to work with and solve those problems at the local level and to work in a collaborative manner for the welfare and benefit of the child and the child's education is primo. That's the main thing in terms of how do you see it working together. When you're working apart and being divisive is when you put the child in the middle, nothing short of a divorce. But the same thing happens with parents, teachers, and children in school. So that collaboration is key and most important. So with that, I would like to just share with those of you that maybe did not get to read, the Parents' Bill of Rights creates more problems than it solves, from the Denver Post editorial board on the 8th of February. An expansive, broadly defined bill moving through the Colorado Senate that seems more manifesto than legislation should be killed. The so-called Parents' Bill of Rights, or Senate Bill 77, aims to clarify parental rights pertaining to the education, health care, and mental health of the children. The bill, sponsored by Senator Tim Neville, Republican Centennial, was approved on party lines in the Republican majority Senate Education Committee, but will face a challenge in the Democratic-controlled House if it gets that far. Legislation should be specific, tailored to address particular issues. This bill creates more problems than it addresses. It prohibits any government agency from infringing upon the fundamental rights of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, and care of the child without first demonstrating a compelling governmental interest. That sounds good, but the nuances of the legislation are alarming. Colorado is one of 19 states to allow parents to opt out on vaccinations for their children on philosophical grounds, which seemed to be the largest issue that was brought forward in the committee, all about vaccines. This legislation would eliminate the need to even ask those exemptions. It also would require public schools to provide information about courses, materials, and their sources within 48 hours of a parent's request. The bill would allow parents to withdraw children from class activities they object to and permit students to opt out on data collection at the district level, perhaps ultimately triggering federal sanctions. Child advocates also say the legislation could impact sex abuse intervention, preventing a child being abused by a parent from seeking counseling without prior approval from the perpetrator. Parents also already exercise control over the education and care of their kids. If there is a specific area where that control has frayed, legislation could address that specific need. But Senate Bill 77 does nothing more than create problems where none now exist. I want to honor the parents that came to testify. I want to honor their concerns because I think when a parent is concerned about their child, that's genuine. And I would never question that. I think that's extremely important, and I do want to respect that. However, I believe the process in which dealing with it is the flaw in this particular bill. It is a matter of working at the core, working with those that are most affected, building that relationship of trust and respect between the teacher, the parent, and the child, and working in a collaborative manner. So with that, I would urge a no vote on Senate Bill 77, and let's give it back to the local control to figure out how do you best solve the problem so that the child wins at the end. Thank you.
Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to bring the other side of the testimony that we heard in the hearing. We had, yes, a lot of people sign up to oppose the bill. Yes, we had a lot of people come and testify about vaccinations, but that's because the opponents to this bill spun it out as an anti-vaccination bill, and that's not what this bill is about. This bill is about parents' rights. One of the parents came and reported that when her child was in school, she was told that the parents were the enemy. Not all teachers would ever say that, and I don't mean to say that about teachers, but when a parent hears that, you can understand their concern about parental rights. Parents have been told that when your kid crosses the threshold of the school, they are mine. I don't agree with that as a parent either. We heard stories from these parents of kids being rounded up in schools, in health clinics in schools, and vaccinated against the parents' wishes. And then we heard about a survey that was sent to the school for kids in middle school and high school to take. The survey is about health behavior. It says what you tell us about your activities will help us to know what you're doing and how it's going to affect your health. They do say they will keep this information private, but they ask for the student's age, their sex, the grade they're in, whether they're Hispanic or Latino, their race, how tall they are, how much they weigh, what language they use at home. It wouldn't be hard to narrow down to at least a small subset of the students in that class who would fit those categories. And on part of the survey, they ask, you know, in the last 30 days, how many times have you eaten vegetables? How many times have you eaten fruit? That all sounds well and good. And then they ask these self-incriminating questions. How many days did you carry a weapon, a gun, or a knife on school property? How many times have you used marijuana? How many times in the last 30 days have you used marijuana? How often do you use marijuana? And then how often do you use it on school property? How many times have you used any form of drugs on school property? Have you ever had sex? How many people have you had sex with in the last 30 days? This survey underscores the reason for Senate Bill 77, because the schools are asking information from parents about their kids that are the parents' business, and these issues need to be handled between parents and kids in their homes. We were told at the hearing of a quote from Thomas Jefferson. He says, if people want to let the government prescribe what they eat, they will be as sick as the souls of people under tyranny. To the parents who came and testified at this hearing for their parental rights, it felt like tyranny to them. We had an immigrant from communist China come and address our hearing, and she talked a lot about how she didn't have the rights as a child in China, and that's why she moved here, to be able to raise her kids in a country where she had the freedoms to raise her kids. And she said it felt a lot like we were slipping back into what she left in China. The final statement of the hearing that impacted me to vote yes and in favor of this bill, and why I would encourage you to vote in favor of this bill, a lady said, these rights that parents have, they might be fundamental rights, but they need to be established. And Senate Bill 77 establishes the parental rights. So I urge a yes vote on Senate Bill 77.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 77. I do want to address one specific issue that the speaker before me brought up. She brought up questions in the health behavior survey. And, one of the things I'm really concerned about in watching the news and watching our society as we go forward is how people question the validity of data. And we're frequently asked here, why are you doing this public education campaign? What's the evidence that it actually works? And the health behavior survey actually is a mechanism of creating data from our children to find out what they actually are doing, not what their parents think they're doing. And this is important information for us as we develop public policy and strategies to help figure out how to educate them to keep themselves well and healthy and protected from illness, and also potentially protected from dangerous situations. I just would hate for people to somehow begin to think that doing confidential research is an infringement on parents' rights. What's most concerning to me about this, however, is that in this bill, our youth are not given the opportunity to access mental health services without having to ask their parents first. And as you may know, we have an inordinately high rate of suicide in the state of Colorado. As I traveled around the state, many of the public health departments that I met with in our rural areas listed as one of their top 2 areas of focus mental health and suicide amongst our youth. And if we put up barriers to the youth to getting the help that they need, I think that we risk increasing the losses that we as a state and these families experience to youth with suicide. I know that in this chamber, the discussion of being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender is often heated and I must say hostile. And I worry that a youth who lives in a home in which that perhaps is not an accepted way of life will not have access to the support that they need to help them work through this and figure out a way to work and communicate with their parents. Would that all of our youth had the ability to be open and honest with their parents? I unfortunately don't think that's really the case. And finally, there are a number of youth who have access to treatment for and education about their own sexual health, sexual identity, as well as questions about whether sexual behavior that they've experienced is appropriate or not. And I don't want us to take that access away from them. I think that what we're doing in Senate Bill 77 is really putting our youth at risk, and I'd urge you a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was listening to the development of the testimony going on for Senate Bill 77 in committee, it was very amazing to hear that all of these people coming up attesting against Senate Bill 77 actually did it in a way of demonizing the parents. There were people, one after another, it was if they were almost going to outlaw parenting. It was almost as if they saw parenting as an evil, and it was something that absolutely shocked me. Shocked me about government. and the government overview over our lives, not just our children and our schools, but our whole lives, regulating every movement we make. And I began to think, because I have worked within the investigations of child abuse, I did that for quite a while, and I did see some stunning and horrific things. How many children have suffered at the hands of a failing government agency? Quite a few. How many children have been separated from a family upon errant information to the courts? Quite a few. Family courts are failing their mission due to lack of proper and professional investigations. We all know that. Are children dying under the eye and control of government agencies? Yes, they are. And this collecting data about our children, where is it stored? Where's that data stored and how secure is it? Who's it being sold to? I think those questions need to be answered. And when you look at the amount of detail that goes into these Healthy Kids Colorado survey, they say, what really strikes me as funny is they say healthy kids. Children. How young are the children on this? Some of the questions on here regarding sexual behavior should be directed towards adults, not children. I do know from my investigations and my years of involvement with children, the only thing that a child really responds to and is looking for is the fact that when they look into an adult's eyes, what comes back is the fact that they are loved and they are valued as an individual. That's all kids want. But government programs within and without our schools, within and without the courts, every government program that I saw in dealing with child abuse investigations dealt with how their behavior had to be appropriate. But it totally declined to look at the fact that love within a family is key to success. A government program does not teach a child how to love. A family does. A school does not teach a child how to love. Through Healthy Kids Colorado surveys and through biology classes, churches can give direction to families, and families are the ones who direct their children. And this should never be taken away. This should always be advocated for, is healthy families and rights for families. So I urge a strong vote for Senate Bill 77. Get the kids back in the family and out of the government.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 77, and I am a parent of two beautiful, talented, smart adult women, and I understand that the parent right to make sure that I am ensuring that my child is getting the best education that they can, the best services that they can, and I think that this goes a little bit too far, and a couple of reasons why. Imagine a girl sitting in a classroom, sits down at her desk, and tears are welling up. Her heart is beating fast, her stomach in knots, and she is just a little stress ball and is sitting looking around the room and looking at her classmates, looking at the teacher, and thinking, I don't know what to do. I am going to have a panic attack here. I am going to break down sobbing right here in the middle of this classroom. In 1975, that was me, sitting in a classroom. And at that moment in time, I went up to my teacher and I said, "May I please go to my counselor?" And the teacher said, without a doubt, she could see the stress. I was already starting to cry. I went to my counselor and spent 2 hours with my counselor, helping me, the little overachiever I was, how to learn how to say no, how to say yes to what I needed to say yes to, how to say no to what I didn't need to, how to comfort me, and did I need any other help? Did I need to talk to anybody else? Under Senate Bill 77, that same child going through that experience would not be able to do that in a moment when that child needs that support. That would not be available, and who knows what would happen with that child. The senator from Denver was talking about the high suicide rate in Colorado. We do have one of the highest suicide rates in the country. It is the leading cause of death for ages 10 through 34. Kiddos are committing suicide in our state at unprecedented rates, and the rates are still going up. This is not a time to cut off services like mental health services, like school counselors, school psychologists, support in our schools when the kiddos need it the most. It does absolutely take a village to raise a child. We all know that. We all know that it not only takes loving and supportive and protective parents and nurturing at home, but it also takes that network around them in their schools, in their communities, in the girls and boys clubs, wherever they are getting that support. We need as many resources as possible for those kiddos in the nick of time so that we prevent any more problems of extended periods of time or finality of life. With that, as a parent, I do respect parents' rights, but I also respect children's rights and children's rights to get to those services that they need in the moment that they need them. I absolutely believe that kids need every resource of support, that they do need and they want love and value as an individual. They do need love within a family, but they also need that larger network. So I am asking for a no vote because we need, and especially with the underfunded schools that we have in this state, and we're all talking about it. Every single one of us in this chamber talks about the underfunded schools. So this is not a time to take resources away. It's a time to add them, if anything. So I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 77. Thank you.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, there is nothing in Senate Bill 77 that would take away the ability of counselors to do what they're hired by the school district to do.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I spent 30 years of my professional life with what's best for kids, how can they succeed, how can I make their life something that they will appreciate, that they will have the best opportunity to be successful and contributing citizens. That was my number one goal for 30 years. And as I said to the parents who were when they testified earlier for committee, you are the parents, you're not the parents that we're concerned with. You obviously care and love your children. But in 30 years, I could not count the number of times that I had children who were not given that kind of love and support in their families. Children who were literally beat and abused by their parents. Some of the situations were really very horrendous. Specifically, a story I want to tell you quickly was that I had a young man who was a student of mine. I was a choir director, and this young man was incredibly talented and the most frustrating, irritating, demanding student I had ever taught. But his talent was amazing. And year after year, I fought with this young man and occasionally, he was obnoxious everywhere. He was getting in fights all the time. Occasionally, he'd come to class with a black eye or bloodied lip, and I just assumed he'd been in a fight. In his senior year, the first day of school, I told him, if I have any more trouble with you, you are out. I'm never going to have you in my class again. And he broke down and cried. And he told me he was sorry, but his father was an alcoholic and beat him and would throw him out on the streets. And that's why he would come to school bloodied and beaten. So I took him under my wing, and he was a great student that senior year, and he went on to college and majored in music, and now he's taken my place at Coronado High School. But he didn't have the kind of background and support that we are assuming that all parents provide. What I'm saying is this bill goes too far. I care about those children who don't have that background, who don't have that support, and this bill would make those children the losers. So I would ask you to care more about the children that we are trying to support and try and provide an opportunity for as senators in this great state, and be more concerned about what might happen to those children. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would say I'm very grateful to see Senate Bill 77 before us. It's about time we've had this discussion. I remember it was in 1994 that there was a question before the people of Colorado, shall there be a parental Bill of Rights in the Colorado Constitution? It was a fairly straightforward measure, 17 words, simply stated in clear terms that parents do have that fundamental right to look after the upbringing of their children, for their education, for their care, for them becoming citizens. And I remember that when the people of Colorado were asked that question back in the spring of that year, that it was polling in the 70% range, because everybody knew that that is exactly what parents need to have, and far too many understood that sometimes that isn't the way it works out. But I also remember the proponents had about $50,000 to promote this across the state, which was something back in '94. But the opponents, who came in from all over the country, spent well over $1 million pounding on this idea that parents should have the primary fundamental authority in raising their kids. The measure died. I found that quite regrettable. Finally, we can have this discussion on the Senate floor, because it is a policy we need to face squarely. It's an issue that's not going away because parents aren't going away. And parents understand this as they bump into the little issues that accumulate until you get this idea that it's the parents versus the state far too often. Senate Bill 77 is to clear the air and say, no, it isn't. No, parents are understood to have that fundamental primary authority in the raising of their children. Now, I would expect at one level that we should all agree on that and support the bill. I understand it didn't come out of the committee that way, and it doesn't seem to be lining up that way here in our debate on the Senate floor either, and I find that disappointing. because this is an issue. You know, everybody comes down here and says, oh, I support this, but I don't support the bill. Well, how about an amendment or two to show us, or at least point out, where's the problem? What's the detail? We've got 9 pages in this bill. What's the problem? I haven't heard anybody come up and say, well, on page such and such, line whatever, this is not going to work. No, what I hear are these general statements of, oh, we cannot really allow parents to have that fundamental authority. Now, if I can if I've listened and understood what the arguments are, it's that we suspect that far too many parents are abusing their children, either sexually or physically in some way. Well, 77 doesn't change the fact that that is illegal, immoral, and not to be tolerated in the state of Colorado. If a parent or any other adult is abusing a child, we have severe penalties. And it doesn't take but one phone call to the authorities to start rolling that ball. Where does Senate Bill 77 prevent that or prohibit that? Now, I heard that another objection is that parents can withdraw their children from activities they object to. Huh? This is a problem? That a parent can be given specific authority to say, when I send my child to a school, if there's something that school is doing that I have an objection to, that I can say, excuse me, but I want my child withdrawn from that program. That's a good thing. That's not a problem. That's a good thing. Some concerns were given on, can a child go to a school counselor with 77 in place? And the sponsor came up and said, there is nothing in this bill that prevents that whatsoever. This is a bill that defends and establishes clearly in state policy that parents do have the fundamental right, responsibility, and authority to raise their children. Is that such a radical concept? I would say to anyone who's considering voting against this, vote against it at your peril, because I'll bet you've got some parents in your district who might disagree with you. Now, if you have specific problems with the bill, this is second reading. This is the time to bring the amendments up, to at least bring the objections up and say, why is this particular line here? What is the problem here? Let's have that debate, because this is an appropriate discussion that we need to spend sufficient time on to actually drill down to make sure this is the best law we can make it. But to march down here and to say, I object to this bill in its entirety, I believe is to state this. I think the state ought to be in charge of the kids. And the parents are merely agents of the state implementing what the state has determined will be the best for the next generation. Is that really the message that we want to be putting forth? Or is the message, we live in America, we live in the state of Colorado, the land of freedom, of opportunity, of a society based on the core institution of the family. And fundamental to that is parents having the authority and the responsibility to raise those kids as best they see. That's the kind of state I was born into, and that's the kind of state I plan on leaving with my kids, and that's why I'm supporting Senate Bill 77.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Senate Bill 77, and some folks have kind of suggested perhaps I was crazy to put my name on the bill, and so I want to dispel that. It was not that I was confused or busy in the moment and didn't realize what I was signing on to. I absolutely knew what I was doing, and I support the bill, and here's why. And I would encourage those who have issues with the bill to do as the good senator from Loveland suggests, to make some, offer some amendments. But as I looked at Senate Bill 77, it struck me as two things, principally transparency, an effort to get more information to parents that they currently are unable to access. And then secondly, it underscores accountability for parental responsibility. I say this as I think about the people in my district, and I think about the state of Colorado as a whole, and I view Coloradans as the kind of people who truly want to strengthen the connection in the home between parents and children. We see that on the soccer field. We see it at many school activities. We see it throughout parent and children's lives. They want that stronger connection. And Senate Bill 77, to me, underscores that desire. We also have a state where parents truly appreciate choice in schools. We have a large number of folks who choose to homeschool their kids. They choose charter schools, maybe online school, private school, because they're fully engaged in the decision-making for their kids, and they want it to stay that way. We also have a lot of bills here in our legislature about choice in health care. People aren't just satisfied with what is viewed as traditional health care, and they want for themselves and their family options for other kinds of care, whether it's something foreign to Western medicine like acupuncture, or it might be homeopathic care. So I think parents, again, have demonstrated a true interest in being more engaged in healthcare decisions for their family members, including their children. The media has definitely spun this bill into the immunization debate, and I think that's both shallow and misguided, because that is barely touched upon in this bill. What is important is, again, what is the role of the parent in the household? And I don't care if the parent is adopting the child, if it's a biracial couple, if it's a same-sex couple, if it's a grandparent who's raising the child. It is the basic family unit at home. It doesn't matter how that unit is composed, but it is the most basic unit that the child leans on, not just during the years that they're in school, but for the rest of their lives. And do I recognize that there are some households who don't have that, whether it's for substance abuse, mental health issues? Absolutely, I do. In my law practice, and I've talked about it here before, I served as guardian ad litem, where I represented those abused children. I represented respondent parents who the state was moving in to terminate parental rights for those parents. I had, at the time that my children were young, I was faced with asking myself on a regular basis through my work, what makes a parent worthy to stay in that child's life, and when is it appropriate that we terminate those parental rights? Talk about a tough job. Talk about a tough job that our judges face when they have to make that ultimate call. Because no matter what the substance abuse might be, the mental health abuse, the mental health issues that the parent might have, there is nothing more ripping of the heart than cutting off a parent from a child forever. So I think the underlying core of what this bill is how do we build up that relationship of the most basic unit in the household between the parent and the child, again, with that parent definition fairly loose. For those who've said that this bill will unleash torrent of child abuse and neglect, let me point you to CRS, Colorado Revised Statute 19-3-304, in which we have in the legislature said very clearly that any person with reasonable cause to know or suspect that a child has been, suspect that a child has been subjected to abuse or neglect shall immediately upon receiving such information report or cause a report to be made of such fact. We then have a list, and I'm going to read it, not to be annoying, because there are 37 required reporters, but I think it's good to know how pervasive we have this mandatory reporting of even a suspected child abuse. Physician or surgeon, including a physician in training, child health associate, medical examiner or coroner, dentist, osteopath, optometrist, chiropractor, podiatrist, registered nurse, licensed practical nurse, hospital personnel engaged in the admission, care, or treatment of patients, Christian Science practitioner, public or private school official or employee, social worker, or worker in any facility or agency that is licensed or certified, mental health professional, dental hygienist, psychologist, physical therapist, veterinarian, peace officer, pharmacist, commercial film and photographic print processor, firefighter, victims advocate, licensed professional counselors, licensed marriage and family therapists, registered psychotherapists, clergy members, registered dietitian, worker in the State Department of Human Services, juvenile parole and probation officers, child and family investigators, officers and agents of the State Bureau of Animal Protection, the Child Protection Ombudsman, educator providing services through a federal special supplemental nutritional program, director, coach, assistant coach, or athletic program, person who's registered as a psychologist candidate, marriage and family therapist candidate, licensed professional counselor candidate, emergency medical services provider, a very extensive list, 37 different kinds of required reporters. We have created a very strong safety net for even any suspected. All it takes is reasonable cause. Any suspicion shall immediately report the information. To say that Senate Bill 77 opens the floodgate to abuse of children, I would say we have many, 37, and then some avenues to report that abuse, and I certainly hope anybody in those positions certainly would do that. But what I think, again, going back to what Senate Bill 77 is, if you actually look at the bill, which is something I always like to do, you will see that there is on page 4 a section that I particularly liked, which was page 4, line 25, talking about promoting the involvement of parents of children enrolled in the schools within the school district. I think that's an awesome policy to promote the involvement of parents of children enrolled in the schools within the school district. The first thing asked for there is a plan for parent participation in the schools that are designed to improve parent and teacher cooperation in such areas as homework, attendance, and discipline. Who doesn't want parents more involved with the teacher on areas of homework, attendance, and discipline? All the time we talk about what is the safety net to put underneath the children. The best safety net to put underneath children is engaged parents, parents who feel welcome, not only welcome, but responsible to be a part of that child's daily life. I think the thing can also, same thinking is embedded in the healthcare decision-making. Again, I welcome anybody who wants to put an amendment or suggest an amendment that would say that this part goes too far, and be prepared to explain why. But when we talk about teen suicide, and you all know I work with Colorado Youth through the Colorado Youth Advisory Council, and that is one of the most delightful experiences I've had for the past 8 years. But every year the kids talk about teen suicide, and what's not moving, unfortunately, is lowering the number of teen suicides. So for everything that's been tried, we're not sufficiently moving the needle. We still have a tremendous number of teen suicides. Why would we in any way not want parents more engaged, more involved, and perhaps able to act in be more aware of where their child is? I think that is what the senator from, where is he? Jefferson County. Thank you. I'm sorry, I forget. Oh, here's a list. I will, what's it? Littleton. Your town. The senator from Littleton, from this side of the aisle, I believe is trying to underscore that most important basic family unit. It was mentioned earlier at the microphone, it takes a village to raise a child. Perhaps, but I think first and foremost, it is that family unit. It is the house that the child goes home to at night with those who he or she sees as their parents. Senate Bill 77 is to shore up that connection, not to destroy it, not to cause harm. I feel strongly that Senate Bill 77 is worthy of my support, and that's why my name's on it. Thank you.
Senator Aguilar.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could legislate good parent-child relationships? I do want to point out that I have read the bill. I have a number of things highlighted in orange here, so I'm not just speaking off the top of my head. And I know that several people have brought up that this bill is not about immunizations, that's just being pumped up in the press. But I point you to page 4, lines 23 through 27, where it talks about the Board of Education developing policies. It says, to promote the involvement of parents of children enrolled in the schools within the school district. The policy must include, and it goes on into page 6, where on line 4 through 12, it says procedures by which a parent can learn about the parental rights and responsibilities under the laws of this state, including the right to, line 12, be exempt from any immunization laws of this state. Now, this right already exists, and we all know this, as is obviously made clear by the fact that we have the lowest kindergarten immunization rate in the country. And so if this bill is not targeted at immunizations, I'm not sure why the bill writer went through the process of targeting them in the specific language. The other thing I was asked is, what would I strike? If you look at page 7, lines 20 through 27, it talks about parental rights related to health care of a minor child, exceptions and penalties. And it talks about what no person, corporation, association, organization, state-supported institution, or individual employed by any of these entities may procure, solicit to perform, arrange for the performance of, and then it goes on to perform surgical procedures, because at the end of the day we always get into abortion, or perform a physical examination upon a minor child, or prescribe any prescription drugs to a minor child without first obtaining, on the next page, written consent from the minor child's parent. Now, it does say on line 6 on page 8 that the provisions of this section do not apply when a physician determines that a medical emergency exists. And this same language is present in section under line 16 through 9. Again, this is related to mental health. Except as otherwise provided by law, a person, corporation, association, organization, or state-supported institution, or any individual employed by any of these entities may not procure, solicit to perform, or provide, arrange for the performance or provision of, or perform or provide a mental health evaluation or mental health treatment of a minor child in a clinical or non-clinical setting without first obtaining written consent from the minor child's parent. And again, on page 9, line 2, it does say it doesn't apply when any emergency exists. And in both these sections, page 8, lines 13, and page 9, line 7, if you do this, if you violate this section, you're guilty of an unclassified misdemeanor. So, let me ask you, was the child that Senator Newell described having a medical emergency? She was sitting in the room anxious. Is that a medical emergency? Was a child who comes to school crying every day having a medical emergency? Is a child who is concerned because she had sex and she's having discharge from her vagina, is that a medical emergency? No. None of those are medical emergencies, yet this law would prohibit them from seeking assistance, and that's why I oppose Senate Bill 77.
Just a reminder not to reference our colleagues by name. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, regarding the immunization piece, we heard from a number of stakeholders, these are parents, who have issues and concerns regarding immunizations being given in clinical settings in certain school districts and other areas without their knowledge. Sometimes we heard directly from parents those immunizations were actually duplicate immunizations that were being given. The records may not have been complete, And so there was a concern there. Parents were extremely concerned regarding that. I do thank my Senate colleague regarding bringing up specifics, because we've been looking forward to specifics coming up. One of the key things that I'd like to focus on is that, let's see, if you go to page 7 under 1416-105, parental rights related to health care of a minor, exceptions and penalty, except as otherwise provided by law. The laws that are currently in force do not change. If treatment or other issues are being covered that are not provided by law, there are guardrails that are put in place to protect the child and to also make sure that the child is kept in safety. That's the goal of this bill. At no point in time does this bill change existing law. It provides specific information regarding the 48-hour piece that was brought up, regarding information that is coming to that we are requesting parental involvement in the schools. We hear from parents, and this actually came not from parents, this actually came from teachers walking my district and making sure teachers understood their number one issue in the schools was a lack of parental involvement. And when we started talking about that, it was a strange dichotomy. They had parents who weren't willing to get involved, in their opinion, with their children in the schools. And when I talked to the parents said the big issue is we can't get information in an easy fashion, or we feel like we're being basically encapsulated or siloed from our children. Well, we tried to address this, to provide clear and easy information, and I think this is an opportunity for all sides and for all people who want to do the best for the child. And the one issue that we have regarding making sure that we're doing the right thing for the child, in no way do I see anything in Senate Bill 77 that allows child abuse. That's against the law. It's been made very clear. This does not provide an option for child abuse, and this actually protects many people, including those people in the schools, the parents, and the children.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in support of Senate Bill 77. It's been fascinating to hear the discussion between those who I think want to advocate for the bill and remind everyone that parents come first when it comes to making decisions for their children, not government, not schools, not us, not a school district, the parents. So in listening to the debate, I went to the fiscal note, and I call your attention to that. The summary of legislation, I'd like to just review what this bill seeks to do. It specifies that parents have a right to direct the education of their child. Is there anyone other than the parent or guardian who would decide what school the son or daughter would attend? A private school, a public neighborhood school, a public charter school, STEM, whatever it might be? Is there anyone better qualified than the parent to make that decision? I think that's a point that we could probably find very close to universal, unanimous agreement on. Access and review to all school records relating to their child. Is there some type of school record that a parent or guardian should not have access to? I say no. I trust the schools that my sons have attended, private, traditional neighborhood, charter. I trust those schools. But I also want to be able to go in and say, I want to understand what information you're collecting on my sons. If you have information, I want to understand what that is. Direct the moral and religious training of their child. There's something unusual maybe about my household. We have an absolute rule, and my sons have heard this over and over again. Rule number 1, respect your mother. And if they show any disrespect with word, with tone, then they have to have a conversation with Dad. Is that right for your household? I don't know, and I wouldn't presume to suggest that that should be. My friend from Denver has given me a thumbs up on that. But I think that that has helped build moral character for my sons. And I see that in their lives today. Is that right for your family? I don't know. Make healthcare decisions for their child, access and review medical records, consent in writing before biometric scan of their child occurs, consent in writing before any record of their child's blood or DNA is made. Does anyone think it's okay for government, whether it's school or some other aspect of government, to collect blood or DNA from your child without your knowledge? I say no. Consent in writing before state or local government makes a video or voice recording of their child. I think that if we're talking about a holiday program or something like that, that parents are out making videos, but what video or audio recordings are taking place outside of the presence of the parents? I think we should know that. I don't think that that's in any way outrageous or suspicious or conspiratorial. I think that that's good for parents to know. Be notified by a state or local government entity that a criminal offense has been committed against their child by someone other than the parent. Does anyone think that parents should be kept in the dark, not be made aware if there's some criminal offense that's been committed against the son or daughter? Should that be kept from a parent? I think that most people would say, no, the parent should be notified of that. And those are the kinds of things that this bill seeks to reassure, to clarify. This bill doesn't seek to abolish government. This bill doesn't seek to abolish schools or teachers. My friend earlier mentioned in a teaching environment the intervention, the coming alongside a student who is dealing with alcoholism in the family. I experienced that. In 78, 79, my mom separated from my dad, and we came back to the Metro Denver area, and I went for the 9th time in my K through 12 career to a new school. I was always the new kid. And there was a man there at Inglewood High School, Jack Aerosmith, who just became our former county clerk in Douglas County. And he saw this kid, 17 years old, didn't have any friends, didn't have a dad in the family, and he took time to intervene in my life. And I wouldn't be here, standing here with you today, and some of you might rejoice that, but some of you may see the wisdom in Mr. A's intervention with me. This bill wouldn't change his ability to make that impact on my life. It wouldn't change the ability of my friend from Colorado Springs to make that intervention in that child's life. That's something we should be grateful for. This bill also reassures the parent's right to learn about the course of study for their child, including learning materials and their sources. As a parent, I want to celebrate the involvement of my wife in the education of my sons because she has been so meticulous in looking at Parent Portal and understanding the performance of our sons day to day. What are they bringing home? What are they learning? What are they missing? Are there assignments that are not turned in? She has done such a great job through their education, K through 12. And there have been times when there's been some lesson plan, some piece of paper that's sent home that you say, wait a minute, we object to this. This does not align with our faith, our morality, what we want our sons to learn or not learn. And she has intervened with principals, with teachers, to say, I don't want my son to do this, or I do want my son to do that. And really, to the credit to the schools that my sons have attended, the answer has been, okay, we understand. So I don't think this bill takes away our ability to have those conversations with teachers, administrators, others in schools. I think it just reassures, redefines, clarifies that it's the parents who get to make those decisions, not anybody else. This bill seeks to allow or clarify that parents may withdraw their child from class activities involving objectionable learning materials and activities. Yeah, my wife's done that. Receive information about opting a child out of human sexuality education at least 15 days before the start of instruction. Right now, we have the opt-out provision in statute. I spoke against that bill when it came through in a prior session. I voted no. But reality in statute today, we have sexual education in our schools, and we have an opt-out. So this bill doesn't look to change that, but what it does say is that parents need to be informed. They need to know they have that ability. So is there some reason that we want to prevent parents from knowing that they have the opportunity to opt their kids out? I can't imagine why anyone would object to that. Learn about the nature and purpose of clubs and activities that are part of the school curriculum or approve extracurricular activity. Should there be programs that students can participate in that parents can't know about? I can't imagine why anyone would object to that. Learn about the parents' rights and responsibilities under state law to review textbooks. Great, great subject right now with the debate on assessments and standards and data collection. Textbooks are changing. Textbooks are now in an iPad. Textbooks may not actually be a book, but should parents not be allowed to understand what those textbooks are, what they're teaching? Again, opt out of sexual education, opt out of assignments. Great protest for the students last year who had the organized protest against CMAS. One of the most well-organized email campaigns that I've seen in my time in the legislature. Opt out of data collection. I'll be running a bill with my friend Representative Pabon about data collection. Absolutely support that. Have a child excused for religious purposes. No matter what the faith is, there are days throughout the year that are special to one family that may not apply to others. That's a good thing to support. Claim an exemption for immunization laws, and this is getting a lot of attention. But that's just this long list of things that I've offered from the fiscal note, that's just one small aspect of this bill, and it seems to be the focus for some critics. Obtain information about open enrollment rights. I am so proud of the bipartisan support for things like concurrent enrollment or assent. Why would we want to keep parents from knowing about that? And I'm not suggesting that anybody does, but again, that's all this bill does is help parents know about those opportunities. In Douglas County, we're trying to encourage more parents to understand that coming out of middle school, 8th grade, if your son or daughter is a high achiever, the school district will build a 2 or 3 year high school plan for that child, that student, and then the district will help pay for that first year of community college or 2. Our friend Senator King, now former senator, is well known for advancing kids out of 12th grade with an associate's degree. What an incredible opportunity, but this bill doesn't change that. It just says we should make an effort to make sure that parents know about those great opportunities and have a child participate in gifted and talented programs, among other things. I go through this list, and as a parent, I say this is good. We're not, again, absolving government. We're not getting rid of schools. We're not putting teachers in some sort of box to where they can't reach out and help students, as Mr. Aerosmith, Mr. A, did in my life. This bill simply reminds every participant in the K through 12 environment, every participant here in the General Assembly, that the people who know what's best for their kids are the parents. And if parents abuse, if they conduct themselves in such a way that removes themselves from those rights, this bill doesn't change that. It just sets the starting point. It doesn't take away an opportunity for us to intervene if a child is at risk, is being abused, is subject to treatment that it's best that they be removed from. And I ask for your support in Senate Bill 77.
Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the good discussion. I have just a couple of specific thoughts, and I wanted to respond to the comments from my friend, the senator who shares the same last name as the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, which is, I do think there are some things in this bill that we all support. I agree with the senators just speaking. Directing the education of the minor child, absolutely support it. It's also already the law. I think that having access to school records, absolutely support it. Also already the law. I think that the ability to get attendance data on your child, absolutely support it. Also already the law. But then there was a request to talk specifics, so let's talk specifics. I also support the idea, like on page 6, line 21, that you can receive a school report card. Also already the law. Which would be the case until you also adopt on page 7, lines 6 through 9, which will actually repeal all of the data that is necessary to get school performance for a parent to exercise their right of school choice to get that school report card. Because if you have a school report card with no school performance data, how do you know anything about how the school does? Right? So what you will find here is the things that are not already law are the things that are going to actually erode the very powers of the parents we're trying to build up, like the power to make informed school choice. But let me give you the most significant example. My friend talked about the exceptions as otherwise provided by law. So let's look at page 8 and 9, lines 17 through 27, and then lines 6 through 9 on page 9. Here's the situation. Okay, as a school principal for 6 years, I can tell you I had a lot of these moments. Here's the situation. 15-year-old girl comes into your office crying. And when 15-year-old girls are crying, they don't speak that coherently. And she's saying something about, why does he do that? Or why is he touching me? And she's weeping. You have a first class with 27 kids down the hall, and you're the teacher, and you don't know what this is, but it seems serious. So what do? You say, I'm blessed to be a teacher that has a school psychologist here. Hold on, Susie. Let me go grab the school psychologist. Goes down, gets the school psychologist, gets her to sit down with child, and child proceeds to tell that school psychologist about the fact that she is being sexually abused by someone. We don't know who it is yet. Could be stepdad, could be stranger, could be dad. And then, you're right, as protected by current law, that school psychologist can now call as a mandated reporter to social services, except on pages 9, lines 7, 8, and 9, you just put, with Senate Bill 77, both that teacher and that school psychologist in jail for a year. You think I'm not telling the truth? Read page 8, lines 19 through 21. Any individual employed by the state may not procure, solicit to perform, or provide, so the teacher procured a psychologist, the psychologist performed or provided a mental health evaluation in a non-clinical setting. That, under Senate Bill 77, is a 1-year jail offense. And you're right, under current law, the person that calls social services is protected, but the teacher and the social worker who wanted to sit down and get that child's mental health status are now facing a year in jail. That's why I think there are some good ideas in Senate Bill 77, and the good thing is those good ideas are already the law. There are some very, I think, well-intended ideas that are very misguided that would dramatically change, I think, the outcome we're after, which is to get more kids better support from families and from the adults who care for them. I'd ask for a no vote.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the data collection and the ability to actually create a report card, on line 6, page 7, it states, opt out of any data collection instrument at the district level that would capture data for inclusion in the state longitudinal student data system, except what is necessary and essential for establishing a student's public school record. We talk a lot about what's in this, and there's a lot of people, I'm not sure if everybody is an attorney, I'm not, but I don't agree with the interpretations that have been put out here. Regarding section 1416-106, parental rights related to mental health care, exceptions, except as otherwise provided by law or a court order. There are protections in the law right now for those people who are interacting with our children. This puts guardrails on that. for the sake of the children as much as for the sake of the parents and the family.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond a little bit to my colleague who's wearing the gray suit with the blue shirt and the brown tie from Douglas County. My point was not that the bill disallows a teacher, or a teacher in my example, from intervening, but that we don't know if there needs to be an intervention. We don't know the secrets that may be occurring within the family. And in addition, I wanted to say that there appears to be, to me, very little in the bill that's not already current law. But my colleague from Durango pointed out a list of people who have a responsibility to intervene. And my concern, as I said earlier with the bill, is it doesn't realize that there are lives being affected where children and youth don't feel safe enough to stand up for themselves. And there are a number of organizations who don't have a dog in this fight other than their care and their commitment to children. And I think it's valuable to know who some of these organizations, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I'm not going to do the whole list, just the ones that may reach across both sides of the aisle for feeding, we have some respect for them. The Colorado Academy of Family Physicians, the Colorado Association for School-Based Healthcare, Colorado Children's Campaign, Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault, the Interfaith Alliance, the Mental Health Partnership, Qualstar Colorado, Wings Foundation for Adult Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse. The list is at least double that. There are a number of people who are more expert than I who are saying this is not the direction we should go. I would please urge you to vote no.
Senator Kerr. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share some of the concerns of some of the people who had come up when parents do come into situations where they feel like they are either disrespected or not included or under-included, or feel like they're running into problems as far as their experience as parents. I wasn't there to hear the testimony for what is there. I think every parent deserves to be treated, as does every child, with respect throughout the whole process. I do think it's interesting that we're having this discussion, and if this were written as essentially, it's fine as a manifesto. If we were talking about a manifesto on some global concepts of what we think, but the problem is this is actually law that we are writing, law that will affect 5.3 million people. And the bill isn't here just to make a point or raise some very good and necessary conversations, but the bill has actual legal effect, including, as has been mentioned before, criminal consequences for people simply doing their job. If you read the bill itself, it reads, the rights in this bill mirror the language of what is more typically used in property rights. When I first looked at this bill, to me, this looks like a no Bill of Rights for kids. The problem with kids in this situation is, has been mentioned by others, that in those few situations that are potentially the most tough, where we aren't talking about the parents who are good parents or average parents, typical parents in any sense. But when the parent, in the situations we all know happen, if it's physical abuse, if it's sexual abuse, if there's someone who's having a suicidal crisis, whether that be about orientation or dealing with PTSD or trauma, by having prior consent required in this situation, we are criminalizing the attempt to get timely help to young people. if you are requiring the consent of those parents as well, even as some have said, if they're committing sexual abuse, it's already a crime. But this bill doesn't exempt out those abusing parents from still having all the same powers over their child as other parents and the other good, caring, loving parents that we're talking about. Those exceptions are not written into the bill. So no matter how problematic the household situation is for the child, there is sort of no escape hatch here, and those folks are given the exact same total control over the situation. Page 2, line 27. We're talking about the right of parents here to direct the education of a minor child. Well, if there's two parents, what if they disagree? I don't know about you, but once in a while, my mom and dad didn't agree. And I bet that happens with other people. So if mom wants one thing and dad wants something else, who decides? Is the school supposed to do both? We've got 5.3 million people in the state of Colorado. So as they're directing, maybe my mom and dad agree, but maybe the senator from Lakewood's parents have a totally different idea of how to direct education. This is a mandate for a completely schizophrenic and unenforceable situation. This means that everybody in the state of Colorado, whether they agree or not, is co-equally able under a right to direct the care. So if your parents disagree with my parents, what do? And what do you do if there's disagreement? Whose decision controls? Specifically on page 3, where we're talking about access and review of all medical records of the minor child. When people come up and talk about what this does to block access to physical and mental health care, it is an absolute elimination of confidentiality for children. That is eliminating a child's right. And if a child is talking to a counselor and not telling their parent or parents, there may be a reason for that. So it's not only a deterrent for getting care, but in these life and death situations where someone may be suicidal or facing abuse at home, if they know that they have neither any confidentiality or all of that information is going to go to a parent, which in some cases may be the perpetrator of a variety of abuse, they're not going to get the help. That is radically eliminating the interests and the rights of a child in both a physical and healthcare situation. So between the fact that we have given co-equal, total, unmitigated direction to the parents to direct the education without provision for what if the parents disagree, what if the parents of different families disagree, that is why I say it basically, it's fine as a manifesto, but in practice here, we will have every parent with a different opinion, as should be the case, about exactly what is best for their child, but nobody can act on anything because basically, you've got conflicts written right into here. I think at the end of the day, criminalizing this, the school counselor situation, where somebody who is intervening to an obvious child in distress without getting prior permission or approval from a parent who may well, in some of these most egregious circumstances, actually be the problem without any exceptions written in here, to criminalize these folks is not only very reckless public policy, but at the end of the day, the net effect of the problematic parts of the bill are that it essentially, in the name of so-called parents' rights, eliminates, in some cases, well, it radically reduces, and in some cases completely eliminates the rights and best interests of the child. And for that reason, would respectfully ask for a no vote.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we're having a good debate. I think we're having it based on shared concern by all for children and hopefully for the family unit, whatever that family unit looks like. I just wanted to respond to a couple of little points that the mandatory reporting is not from a child's perspective. So it is not a question of whether a child feels compelled, particularly under this bill, that they can't report things. These are 37 categories of adults who, if they even suspect, with only reasonable cause, not clear and convincing evidence, reasonable cause, they shall immediately report that. So again, I find it a bit of a red herring to say that this bill would open the floodgates to additional abuse. I would return the attention, though, to, again, the family unit. I would say when my son was in high school, and hopefully he's not watching because he's now an adult at 26 and doesn't like it when I talk about him, but we had some challenging years when he was in high school. And my son I knew always as a good soul, but was not always focused on the importance of going to class or being in high school. I will say that my husband and I were on speed dial with the attendance office. We were regularly trolling the halls of the high school trying to find a teacher who could connect in a way that would demonstrate to my son in a way that apparently we hadn't been able to, the importance of him dedicating himself to being in school and taking it all seriously, and the importance it would have on his economic well-being, et cetera, et cetera. But I can tell you as a parent who struggled in that high school, which is a challenge so many parents face, when you feel wrapped in a cocoon as much as you're trying to break out and reach the people who are seeing your child more than you are, and you can't reach that child because of whatever that reason might be, but you can't reach the people who are seeing your child that much because of so many barriers in the way, or a general feeling that he's not really a major troublemaker, we don't need to focus on him. As a parent, that's the sole focus that you have. To me, as I see this Parents' Bill of Rights, we are again trying to fully engage. And great, if there are some things in law here, I would guess the sponsor would welcome amendments that would reference over to that part of the statute. That's certainly a regular course of action here. Things aren't mentioned just one time. We will say as in CRS wherever. Maybe some of these things deserve double mention in our 42 plus volumes of Colorado revised statutes. To me, again, one of the most basic things about human existence is our family, however it's defined, however we can strengthen it. This bill, to me, that is the intent of it. If there are parts that for you are inartfully worded, let's talk about it. And the bill sponsor, I think, has indicated a willingness to hear about it, but rather than dismiss it and dismiss the many parents who are out there who are struggling to be a big part of their child's life, I think we need to honor that. And Senate Bill 77, to me, only rights the seesaw that we've kind of created where parents have felt left out. And I, again, reiterate my support for Senate Bill 77.
There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L006?
Amendment L006 to Senate Bill 77 by Senator Johnston, amend printed bill page 8, strike line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the comments that come before. I think this is I move Amendment 6 to Senate Bill 77, and I think this is a good faith attempt to find some common ground on this issue. And I think there are a lot of things that were mentioned before that we all agree with. I think this is one that I don't think was the intent of the drafter of this bill, which is a lot of things we may support. Let's at least take out the part of this bill that is going to criminalize teachers and education providers who try to help kids who are in distress. And again, I want to be clear, the sections that were just quoted, current law protects the mandated reporter. The mandated reporting is the educator making the phone call to social services. That is protected. For the educator to make that phone call to social services, she has to have information on what she thinks just happened. Attaining that information is an informal mental health intervention that is done with a child. That is criminal under this bill. So the teachers, the school counselor are facing a year in jail before they get the protection to call social services and report it. So all this does is says, despite the rest of the good values and intentions in this bill, let's not go so far as to criminalize educators who are just trying to help. And so I'd ask for an aye vote to take out that section at the end of the bill.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the amendment that was brought forward. However, we've heard testimony from several sources that we have protection under the law currently. If there is something that focuses on refocusing on specific statute to provide some comfort to those that may have an issue, I'd be willing to do that. But to take these issues out of the bill actually actually takes away some of the guardrails that parents, children, and families should have under the bill. I urge a no vote.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I rise in support of this amendment. You know, we've heard the esteemed senator from Littleton, and want to make sure folks get the sponsor of the bill is from Littleton. I am from Lakewood. Another one of the senators who spoke is from Loveland. I think we have another senator from Longmont. I know all of us that come from cities with L's all look the same, but I want to make sure you know I'm from Lakewood. He's from Littleton. But earlier he mentioned, before we got to this amendment, earlier he mentioned the line, except as otherwise provided by law, meant that nothing would change, that this bill doesn't change law, which last time I checked, that's what we do here is we have bills that change laws. So that sentence there is curious. And it's only in 2 sections of the bill. It's only in the section that would be impacted by this amendment we're talking about right now, and it's also in the section 1416-105 right before this section. Otherwise, except as otherwise provided by law. So either we are changing law or we are not. That sentence, sentence fragment is not in the other sections, the first 2 sections of this bill. So from that sense, right now we have confusion. Are we changing law or are we not? Is part of the bill changing law? Is part of it not? So I think this amendment would help clarify that at least the part of the bill that would be struck, we would not be changing law, and teachers and other educators would enjoy the same protections and guarantees of doing their job that they have right now. You know, as we look at this, I can't help but think back to last week when we had here on the floor a tribute read to the National Counselor of the Year, Corey Nostine from Alamosa. We all got our pictures taken with him. We were very proud of him. Right here in Colorado, right here in Alamosa, we honored the National Counselor of the Year. That means of all of the thousands, tens of thousands of school counselors from around the country, Corey was honored as being the absolute best counselor. And we've heard examples today about what counselors do, how counselors end up actually talking to students, and it's almost always a referral from a teacher. Almost always. When I was teaching in the middle school and the 7th graders coming in, the counselors, I'm the one, as the 7th grade teacher, that first day of school, I'm the adult that the kids see. I'm the one that sees them each and every day. It's that classroom teacher. The vast majority of the time, it's not the counselor in which the student initiates the conversation. It's with the teacher, and then the teacher refers the student to the counselor. So let me go back. Think about Corey, National Counselor of the Year, and the great work that all of our counselors are doing across the state of Colorado. And now we want him in the back of his head to have this statute, knowing that he is one of the 37 professionals, 37 job descriptions that is a mandatory reporter, including the teacher that referred most of the students to Corey. Now we want that teacher and that counselor to always have in the back of their head, except as otherwise provided by law or a court order, a person, corporation, association, organization, or state-supported institution, or any individual employed by any of these entities. We're all thinking, okay, we're talking about we're talking about teachers, we're talking about counselors, may not procure, solicit to perform or provide, arrange for the performance or provision of, or perform or provide a mental health evaluation or mental health treatment of a minor child in a clinical or non-clinical setting. That is what Corey does every single day. That is what the teachers in Alamosa, in Corey's school, do every single day. And yes, we have the piece back here that says this section does not apply when an emergency exists. Okay, we can all have our own definition of emergency, but what is Corey's definition of emergency? What is the definition of emergency to that kid who I guarantee you will never read this statute? What is that definition of emergency? That requires a professional person to perform a mental health screening or provide mental health treatment to prevent serious injury or to save the minor child's life. Now, we heard examples, and I could give you 1,000 examples of where a student came to me with an issue and I immediately referred them to a counselor. Do I think that I did that to prevent immediate serious injury or save the minor child's life? Certainly in some cases it could have saved a life or prevented serious injury, but there's no way a teacher or a counselor knows that. So all of those conflicting ideas, and we have a system right now where all of the rights that have been read up here, all of those rights are already protected under current law. And then we have an explanation, well, Senate Bill 77 doesn't really change any law. Then why do we even need it? But then we have these conflicting pieces about that teacher and that counselor like Corey trying to think through this. Is it an emergency? Is the child's life at risk? Am I at risk of an unclassified misdemeanor punishable by a fine of not more than $1,000? You know what? That kid's life is worth it. Maybe I'll get fined $999 doing my job. Or they might only throw me in jail for 360 days rather than 365. That is not the sort of sword or axe hanging over our professionals that are trying to do their jobs each and every day. That's not the sort of language that we need hanging over their head. With that, I support this amendment.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, I also rise in support of Amendment L006. This would take care of that child who comes in every day crying. I think under my understanding of what the sponsor has said, right now you could mandatorily report somebody because the child comes in crying every day. But if we get rid of this section and we strike it like L006 does, the teacher can just refer them to a counselor. So I'd ask for an aye vote on L006.
Senator Lundberg. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'd recommend a no vote on the amendment, and I'll try to briefly tell you why. We've had a very long discussion on this entire bill and appreciate that, but I don't want to extend this any more than it needs to be. But unfortunately, the amendment strikes the entire section, just gets rid of it, and says, well, okay, when it comes to mental health issues, you don't have to contact the parent. Because the amendment really says, or the section in the law, the bill right now, says something that I think should be self-evident. If your child comes into a school counselor's office crying, I should hope one of the first things the counselor will do is to call the parent and say, we have an issue with your child that you have a problem with as well. I mean, you know, bring them into this. And that's what I read within the bill, that the intention is. Unfortunately, the amendment just says, well, let's throw the whole thing out. I could see maybe adding some specificity on what an emergency situation is so as to target the fact that we are talking about mental illness, not a physical illness. But this amendment does not address this in this way. It simply throws the whole thing out. I recommend that we resist this amendment and move forward with the bill in its present form.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I do want you to know that actually mental health emergencies are already defined. In fact, they're what physicians use to put patients on 72-hour mental health holds, and they literally mean that somebody is actively homicidal or suicidal. And so and I can tell you there are lots of people who we put on mental health holds and the ER says, nope, they're not actively suicidal or homicidal, and they discharge them right away. You might remember actually the son of a congressman who was discharged and went on to kill himself. And so I don't think you can try and define when is it okay or not okay to send a child to a school counselor in any way that does not create an unnecessary barrier to them getting the help that they need. And so I would ask for your support of L006.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L006? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of Amendment L006. Division has been called. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. Motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L006. All those in favor, please stand. Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand. That motion passes and the amendment L006 is adopted. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L007?
Amendment L007 to Senate Bill 77 by Senator Aguilar.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Amendment L007 removes the same language that was put into the bill on bottom of page 7 and top of page 8 regarding the health care of a child. Again, this is related to that child who may be experiencing a medical issue they're embarrassed or afraid to talk to their parent about, to allow them to go to our school-based clinics and seek help without any fear on the part of the school-based clinics for giving them assistance. And I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I move Amendment L007.
Thank you, Senator Aguilar. Is there any discussion on Amendment L007? Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L007 is definitely worse than L006 and definitely wipes out more of the bill and more of the opportunity to protect parents and children. And I definitely would appreciate a no vote.
Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this amendment. As another example in the real world, in high school, I slipped and fell walking across the street and severed a nerve in my arm. It wasn't going to kill me. It was acute and required on-the-spot physical treatment. Again, I wasn't going to die, but I severed a nerve in my arm, and the proper response of the school officials was to get school-based medics into immediate treatment. Now, they did contact my parents as quickly as possible as soon as I was treated and stabilized, but this is the kind of stuff that happens every day in the real world that is serious but short of life-threatening. And for the same reason, we would not want to criminalize people trying to provide mental health help to kids. There's no other reason why we would want to criminalize people providing physical health care to stabilize the well-being of our children, and would also ask for an aye vote.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, let me direct your attention to portions of the bill that this amendment would remove, that the senator from Aurora said wouldn't work in a situation she had described, and that is on page 8, lines, let's see, I'll just start at line 6. The provisions of this section do not apply when a physician determines that a medical emergency exists and that it is necessary to perform a surgical procedure for the treatment of an injury or of drug abuse, or to save the life of the minor child, or when the minor child's parent cannot be located or contacted after reasonably diligent efforts. The example we have been given is completely covered in this bill. The reasons for removal of this section are not given yet, because if a child is injured and a physician determines that there needs to be, and we're not talking about some level of injury, we're talking about if it needs to be treated, the treatment can be given. The point of this section is that under normal circumstances, you talk to the parent first before giving medical procedures to the child. I believe it's very clear. I believe this amendment does not strike the mark that's being described, and that we should resist this amendment.
Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this would not cover my situation. On page 8 in the bill, it says when a physician determines of medical emergency. The person who first found me on the fall was not a physician. That person would have been a criminal under this bill, subject to a misdemeanor. They are not covered. Eventually, I got into the hands of a physician, but the appropriate school professionals that intervened to help me before that moment were not physicians. It is not covered by the bill. Also, as far as prior contact, I don't know if you've ever severed a nerve before, but it's extremely painful. And so while due diligence was done as quickly as I was stabilized, to make a child wait in pain while they may have one or two working parents who may or may not be available on the phone is frankly cruel and bizarre, and then to add a criminal penalty to that makes no sense. So we just clarify that on the factual situation given, there is no protection in the bill. Again, the first responders on the scene not being physicians would be criminalized unless we pass L007.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Medical emergencies are well described in law currently. Our first responders and others know how to deal with that. L007 does not really help that situation, and the bill basically does not get in the way of medical providers. If somebody had suffered a severed nerve or something to that level, allows those people still to do what they need to do under the current law and under, if we adopt Senate Bill 77 as is.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Medical emergencies are defined in statute, and I can tell you about a patient who came to see me at the urgent care center at Denver Health who had a ruptured disc that led to severe pain in her leg, and she was not entitled to treatment because that is not a medical emergency. A medical emergency, by definition, means that there is imminent risk of death or damage to life or limb. And so I respectfully disagree and ask for your support for L007.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the motion before the division has been requested. Will all those in the chamber not entitled to vote please be seated? Will all those in favor of Amendment L007 please stand? Please be seated. Will all those opposed to Amendment L007 please stand? That motion fails. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L008?
Amendment L008 to Senate Bill 7.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I withdraw Amendment L008.
Amendment L008 has been withdrawn. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L005?
Amendment L005 to Senate Bill 77 by
Senator
Senator
Kerr.
Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L005. L005 adds to the pieces of information that school districts are to make available for parents, specifically around taking a short-term parental leave from employment to participate in their child's academic activities. This is already set in statute 813.3103, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Senator Neville.
Mr. Chair, I ask the chair to give us a ruling on this, whether this amendment actually fits under the title.
It will be in a senatorial 5. Senate will come back to order. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move this amendment in the Education Committee as well, and I just want to rise up. We're talking about a section of the bill that specifically enumerates the communication between a school district and the parents. We've heard up here, both from proponents of this bill and opponents from this bill, we have heard how important it is that parents are involved in their kids' lives, specifically around educational opportunities. This is already in statute. This is a piece and I've heard from folks who supported and opposed this original statute going into place, that there is a lack of information around this this particular right that parents in our state have to take a short-term leave from their job in order to attend to their children's school activities. I think this fits completely within, and not to argue whether I believe that's already been determined, but I think that this is an important piece to be included within this bill. If we're talking about a parent's Bill of Rights and the rights that parents have, and this is a section of the bill that talks about what the school district needs to inform parents about. This is a very, very important piece that parents need to be informed about. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only comment is that we've heard everything on this. It's in statute, and my understanding would be that anything that the schools provide, I'm sure they would be providing this information in their rules. So, looking at the bill, does it help the bill? No. Does it hurt the bill? No. Does it provide parents with possible other information that they might not already have? Possibly. My hope would be that this would be covered by the information that they would get from the schools regarding the parts of the bill that require that. So, I probably won't support the bill. Support the amendment, but I'm not really concerned one way or the other on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The noes have it. That amendment is lost. There is another amendment on the desk, Amendment L004. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L004?
Amendment L004.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L004.
To the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L004 is an amendment I also ran in the Education Committee. And again, we have heard from both the proponents of this bill and opponents of this bill just how important this is. I opened my remarks much earlier today, talking about the U.S. Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights, and how important it is to us and each and every American citizen in our country. If we are going to be naming a piece of legislation, Bill of Rights, and putting the word parent in front of that, I think we need to make sure that we have the utmost consideration of each and every word in here. I do think that we've done some good work on this bill and narrowed it to where it needs to go. I think it could still use some more work. But as the good senator from Loveland mentioned earlier, there was a citizens' referendum that would have gone into the Colorado Constitution called the Parents' Bill of Rights back in 1994. That was defeated at the polling places, and I want to make sure if that is the information we have, that this was defeated by the general population before, that we make sure that they have their voice heard on this very important piece of legislation called the Bill of Rights. After all, when the U.S. Constitution was amended, the first 10 amendments, there were actually 12. Madison actually wrote 12 that he wanted in Amendment 1 and Amendment 2. Amendment 2 was eventually adopted into the 27th Amendment. Amendment 1 has never been adopted, and then 3 through 13 were adopted into the Bill of Rights. Not until 9 states had voted to adopt the Bill of Rights. So that process was very thorough, and each of the 13 original colonies and 13 original states were able to vote on that Bill of Rights. I think every single person of voting age in Colorado has a right to vote on this. I ask for the adoption of L004.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to my esteemed senator from Lakewood. By the way, I'm not from Littleton, and I'm from unincorporated, liberty-loving Jefferson County, just to make sure that's clear. I do have a Littleton post office address or mailing address, so just to be clear for the record. Amendment 4 was brought up in committee, and it was voted down in committee. We do have an ability to bring this. There is no safety clause on this bill, so it has the ability to go to referendum if that is the process and people want to get behind that. However, I want to remind you that we're talking about rights. Are these just rights, or are these inalienable rights? These are inalienable rights. I don't want to put the Bill of Rights, our Constitution, or anything else to a vote of the people where it's 50 plus 1 makes a difference. And those people that might be protected under those rights then are disenfranchised. So again, this is a good bill, and if you want to put it to a referendum, there is a process in the bill that it can happen, but I would ask you and urge you, let's vote down Amendment 4.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And boy, is it refreshing to hear people talk about not putting groups of people's rights on the ballot to be decided by a popular majority. Boy, is that refreshing, because we have a long history in the state of doing just that. And I personally find that distasteful. I think no man's rights or no woman's rights depends on the outcome of an election. And I'm not real crazy about this amendment because this issue's been on the ballot before, and it was quite divisive, and it was quite resoundingly rejected. And I don't think we need to go through that again. But I strongly wanted to concur with the idea that we shouldn't be voting on individual groups' rights. And if we have consensus on that, then it's a day we're moving forward in Colorado.
Any further discussion? Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think when we've had a situation where the voters have resoundingly addressed and rejected an issue, if people are correct in that parents are clamoring for the purported content of this bill, albeit criminalization of health care and the micro direction from every parent in the state of Colorado on what is and isn't exactly in their curriculum or whether or not folks get vaccinated. If people support the prospects of what is in this bill, then I think there is nothing to fear by taking it to the voters. But unlike the last speaker, I think what we're voting on here is not truly people's rights, but the erosion of some very fundamental rights pertinent to the safety and well-being of children. And if the public thinks that that is a good idea, then they will vote yes. This has gone to the people before. The people have rejected it. If we're going to resurrect it again, I think people have a right to weigh in, and we'll see what the people of Colorado think.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L? Which one are we on? 004. Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. The noes have it. The amendment is lost. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L009?
Amendment L009 to Senate Bill 77.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L009. And members, what this amendment does is on page 7, line 25, it says arrange for the performance of just procedures, and then it strikes or perform a physical exam or prescribe a prescription drug to a minor child. And so what this would allow would be for our school-based clinics, which exist in every high school in Denver, including the one in the part of Denver that one of my colleagues who's sponsoring the bill represents. And this would allow the school-based clinics to continue to provide services to our children, but they would not be allowed to do any type of procedures on the children. and without the parental consent. And so I'd ask for an aye vote to allow our school-based health centers to continue to operate in our schools.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam Mr. Chair. I recommend that we vote no on this and would simply note that apparently parental consent is not considered a necessity for an examination today in a school-based clinic. I find that troubling. I find that very troubling. And I believe the parents of Colorado need to pay attention to this particular amendment and note that there is resistance to the notion of a parent being asked, can we give your child a physical examination in a school-based clinic? You got that? Listen carefully. This amendment, if I'm hearing the sponsor's description accurately, is striking the requirement that a parent be consulted and asked for permission for the child to have a physical examination in a school-based clinic. That's a great argument for this bill, to pass the bill without this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the motion before the body. Division has been requested. Will all those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of Amendment L009, please stand. Please be seated. Will all those opposed to Amendment L009 please stand? That amendment is lost. To the bill. The only one I have in the queue right now is Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I wanted to weigh in here because I've heard great debate and good conversation about this bill and the potential that this bill actually provides for parents' rights, but I wanted to speak very specifically about its impact on kids. And I know that many of my colleagues have spoken to those potential impacts, but when the information that is shared on behalf of a youth in a very sensitive situation of what the potential outcome could be for that kid. When I was in college, I had the great fortune of meeting a young man who was a good hard worker. He worked at a local restaurant at the Cheesecake Factory in Boulder. He was someone who was very committed to his family and his faith, and also was gay. And when that information came to light to his parents, they kicked him out of the house. That happens to a lot of LGBT youth. They're kicked out and put on the streets. That's why more than 50% of the kids who live on the street are LGBT. And this case was more powerful and impactful for me because that young man, when he was kicked out on the streets, when his parents found out about his sexual orientation, was undergoing chemo treatment for cancer. They decided to remove him from their health insurance, throw him on the streets with no access to medical resource because they found out about his sexual orientation. That is appalling to me that a parent would do that, but unfortunately in that situation, that is what happened to that young man when his parents found out. Under this bill, I heard my colleague from Douglas County, I think, say that parents should know when a child enters into an extracurricular activity and be able to approve said extracurricular activity. So let's envision a 17-year-old kid who doesn't have support from a family member, doesn't have support from parents about his sexual orientation and the coming out process, and decides to join a gay-straight alliance in school. Thankfully, we have that resource in many of our local public schools, some of our charter schools, even some of our private schools, to ensure that those students actually have support and resources from parents or from people who aren't their parents. That might come from a teacher, it might come from peers who are going through a similar process of coming out of the closet. And that kid isn't sitting there wondering, what does statute say about whether or not this information will be disclosed to my parents? But they go to a place that they perceive to be safe, and that's the Gay Straight Alliance. And when they show up to that club, and then there is a notice required or a triggering effect that goes straight from that school extracurricular club to that parent. There could be very real consequences for those kids based on the information that was disclosed, because we're protecting the parents' rights to know, not the safety, welfare, and health of those kids. And that's not a small problem. It's not a technicality in the bill. It is a focus of the bill. It is a major thrust of the bill, that the parents would have ultimate decision about what happens there. And I am telling you today, the real lived consequence for so many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth is that when their parents find out about their sexual orientation, and maybe the only place they've talked about it is in a Gay Straight Alliance, they end up on the streets. So with mandated reporting about those clubs, those activities to parents, we might be seeing more of those students end up on the streets homeless without access to health care, like the kid that I just mentioned who ended up on the street without his chemo. I think that is a terrible position to put our young people in, and that's why I am adamantly against this bill.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 70? Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And like some bills that we see every year, there's always a lot of discussion about bills that we feel are very critical. Parents' Bill of Rights, the intent of the bill, we can all agree, all senators on both sides, that parental rights should be sacred, barring extraordinary and extreme circumstance. Our society also generally agrees that these circumstances may dictate some form of governmental intervention on behalf of the child. However, in the interest of protecting children, we sometimes, and have gradually and unintentionally many times, blurred the lines between the best interests of children and the rights of their parents to raise their children according to their own particular values, norms, and best judgment. Hopefully this bill starts that first step toward getting back to where we need to go. Colorado Revised Statute 1322-107 states, the General Assembly hereby finds, determines, and declares it is the public policy of this state that parents have a fundamental right and responsibility to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their children. The law has long presumed that parents act in the best interest of their children. That's the focus. We need to get back to understanding that parents care and love and can make best decisions for their children in almost all cases. In those cases where they can't, there are abilities under the law to address those. So I believe we've heard enough about the bill, and I appreciate the input from both sides, and particularly this side of the aisle. It's a long process for any bill, and I would request an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 77? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 77. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No! The ayes have it, and that bill is adopted. Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Motion before the body is for the committee to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills, that number being one, under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 11, 2015, Mr. President, your committee of the whole basic reports out in consideration of the following attached bills being the second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 77 as amended, passed on second reading in order and gross placed on the counter for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 122 laid over until February 12, 2015, retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
We have amendments. It's a nice letter. This doesn't really work there. Mr. Majors, please read the report, the amendment.
Committee of the whole amendment 2 to Senate Bill 77. Senator Aguilar moved to amend the report of the committee of the whole to show that the following.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I had hoped to avoid this topic. This is L009, which would prohibit surgical procedures but still allow youth to access medical care. And I want you to know that Denver has school-based clinics in all of their high schools and has seen a dramatic reduction in teen pregnancies and STDs. And I don't know how many kids feel comfortable talking to their parents about sexual exploration and having sex across our state by making long-acting contraceptives available to children. We've had a reduction of 40% in teen pregnancies and a reduction of 35% in abortions. And by putting up barriers to children, to youth who we know are engaging in these behaviors, whether we support that or not, we are only going to lead to increased poverty and increased difficulty for them growing older. And so I'd ask for your support for L009 so that these youth can still have access to these services at their school-based clinics.
Senator Aguilar, we are on 002, and you need to move it, please.
I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 002. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on 002. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge a no vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment 2? Are there any no votes? Mr. Majority Leader. Senator Lundberg. Senator Woods. Senator Grantham. Senator Neville. Senator Lambert. Senator Crowder. Senator Roberts. Senator Cook. Senator Scott. Senator Balmer. Senator Baumgardner. Senator Sonnenberg. Senator Holbert. Senator Martinez-Humenick. Senator Marble. Senator Hill. Please add the President. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, that amendment fails. Mr. Majors, would you please read Amendment 3?
Committee of the whole amendment 3 to Senate Bill 77 by Senator Kerr moved to amend the report of the committee of the whole.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee to the Whole Amendment 003.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the amendment that refers this question to the people under referendum. I urge an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment 3? Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we pointed out in the bill, there is an option. There is no safety clause in the bill. I urge a no vote.
Further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment 3? Are there any no votes? Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Lundberg, Senator Grantham, Senator Woods, Senator Neville, Senator Crowder, Senator Lambert, Senator Marble, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Cook, Senator Holbert, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Hill, Senator Scott, Senator Balmer, Senator Roberts, Senator Stedman. Please add the president. With 16 ayes, 19 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the amendment is lost. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Amendment 4?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 4 to Senate Bill 77, Senator Kerr removed amendment. Report of the Committee of the Whole shows the following. Clerk.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 004.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the amendment that makes sure that districts are informing parents about their rights to take a short-term parental leave from their employment so that they can participate in their students' academic activities. This is already in statute, similar to many of the other ideas and activities that are listed in the bill that are already in statute, already available to parents. This is the part of the bill, though, that explains that districts need to communicate this to parents so parents actually know about this. So I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge a no vote.
Further discussion on Amendment 4. Are there any no votes? Mr. Majority Leader. Senator Marble. Senator Baumgartner. Senator Lundberg. Senator Cook. Senator Hill. Senator Grantham. Senator Woods. Senator Holbert. Senator Scott. Senator Neville. Senator Sonnenberg. Senator Balmer. Senator Lambert. Senator Crowder. Senator Martinez-Humenick. Senator Roberts. Please include the president. 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused. Amendment 4 is lost. Are there further amendments? Is there further discussion on the Committee of the Whole report? Are there any no votes? Senator Stedman. Minority Leader Carroll. Senator Merrifield. Senator Johnston. Senator Ulibarri. Senator Aguilar. Senator Heath. Senator John. Senator Kerr. Senator Garcia. Senator Todd. Senator Newell. Senator Donovan. Senator Guzman. For the no votes, Senator Jones. With 20 ayes, 15 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Announcements. Signing of bills.
February 10, 2015, the President has signed Senate Bills 35 and 98.
Announcements. Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you would be kind enough to indulge me for a couple of minutes. I have two tributes that I wish to share with you. I'll be brief. It's been a long morning. As you know, today is Colorado State University Founders Day, and if you had the opportunity to be in the rotunda prior to convening, you heard the I think quite magnificent music echoing throughout the building. And so in that spirit, I'd like to share with you the words on this tribute to CSU. The state of Colorado, the Senate and the House of Representatives convened in the 70th General Assembly hereby extend sincere commendations to Colorado State University. On the occasion of Founders Day, the members of the Colorado General Assembly are proud to join with the Colorado State University system in its celebration of 145 years of outstanding work in education, research, and service. Beginning as a Moral Act land-grant institution in 1870, CSU has developed into a world-class university system that offers different learning environments, a range of educational opportunities, diverse student populations, and an emphasis on innovative hands-on learning experiences. Emphasizing access, affordability, and success, CSU provides life-changing educational experiences to nearly 180,000 living graduates. Combined with its natural resources service agency and its world-class research in a number of different fields, CSU's overall impact on our state is truly immeasurable, and we hope for its continued success. On request of Representatives Jenny Arndt and Joanne Janal and Senator John Kafalis, given this 11th day of February 2015, State Capitol in Denver. Thank you.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, I also have a tribute to a friend of mine, Professor Emeritus Ben Granger. He was a previous head of the social work department at CSU. He passed away last month, and his wife was here and some of the family, and I'd like to read this very quickly. The Senate of the Colorado Legislature, convened in the first regular session of the 70th General Assembly, hereby honors and remembers Ben Granger for being an active and vibrant member of the Fort Collins community. A veteran of the Korean War, Mr. Granger was a longtime professor at Colorado State University, former director of the School of Social Work at CSU, and co-director of the Human-Animal Bond in Colorado. A champion for those in need, Mr. Granger led a life of service and advocacy, educating future generations of social welfare workers. He will surely be missed, and his passing will be deeply felt by the community. Ben Granger, thank you, colleagues. Ben Granger was a friend of mine. We go back many years, the days when I worked at Catholic Charities, and we were trying to engage people in the business of the legislature. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kafalis. I'm sorry, Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Moment of personal privilege to extend remarks about
Granted.
CSU. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I have become a huge fan of CSU Global. Under the leadership of President Becky Takeda Tinker, CSU Global has become a worldwide provider of higher education in an online environment. Becky is such a vibrant leader of that organization, and I was so honored to meet her when she came as a parent living in Elbert County in the northwest corner of Elbert County, which is included in the Douglas County School District. And this parent was interested in serving on the District Accountability Committee. And then I came to understand that this parent was the president of one of the finest, I really truly believe, the future of higher education. And President Tadeka Tinker became a participant in our school district on the District Accountability Committee. What an honor it has been to work with President Tadeka Tinker and to watch the growth of CSU Global. So if you're not familiar with them, please take time to visit with the CSU folks who are here today. I am not an alum, so when the CU and the CSU folks, battle it out on the football field, I don't really have a preference. But when it comes to higher education, I just point you to CSU Global and the huge success that they are on a worldwide basis. Thank you.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind my colleagues that tomorrow morning there is an opportunity to welcome Western State Colorado University to the Capitol. We will be gathering for coffee and chatting outside the old Supreme Court chamber. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, reminder today is Behavioral Health Caucus. And I know that many of us have upon adjournment committees. However, there is such thing as a free lunch today through Behavioral Health Caucus for legislators. It will be 12 to 1 in 107 down in the basement. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Health and Human Services Committee, we will be laying over Senate Bill 105 and Senate Bill 103. We will be hearing Senate Bill 70 and 109. Please get up there quickly. We'll be as fast as we can.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joint Budget Committee start will be delayed until 1:30 today. Also, I have distributed Civil Air Patrol membership cards to everybody that was carried over from last year. For those that you had not signed up last year, the new members or people who had not registered already, you should have received a copy of a Dear Colleague letter on your desk this morning. If you'd like to be the legislative member of the Civil Air Patrol, just sign that form and give it back to me at my desk. Thank you.
Further announcements? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So members' committees will be meeting upon adjournment as scheduled. Please note that Senate Education will not be hearing Senate Bill 71. If you're looking ahead in your schedule, tomorrow's Senate Finance Committee will not be hearing Senate Bill 118. Final reminder that tomorrow is the recreation photograph, so remember to wear your dark clothing, and Friday is the recreation picture, so plan on wearing your dark clothing as we get ready for that. And we are going to keep the desk open to read a few bills over. So with that, Mr. President, I move the Senate recess until 12:30 today, February.
Motion is to practice tomorrow for our photograph on Friday, and that the Senate recess until 12:30. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will stand in recess until 12:30.